Greetings everyone, this is Dr. Yashashwini here. I'll be speaking on the topic today, Introduction to Services, Chapter 1, which is being affiliated to Bangalore City University, and the topic is Modern Marketing. The contents that I'm going to explain to you are services, meaning and definition, characteristics of services, classification of services, distinction between goods marketing and service marketing, marketing mix in service industry, growth of service sector in India, service processes, designing the service process, services blueprint. Services, meaning and definition. Marketing on the whole can be divided into goods marketing and services marketing. Although, according to Philip Kotler, besides goods and services, a marketer also markets 8 other entities like events, experiences, persons, places, properties, organizations, information, and ideas. Yet it is generally clubbed together and is widely known as goods and service. In marketing, services marketing essentially deals with products which are intangible in nature. Services are created through a direct interaction between the service provider and the customers. Services can be defined as following. A service is any activity or benefit that one party can offer to another, which is essentially intangible and does not result in the ownership of anything. Its production may or may not be tied to a physical product. A service business is one in which the perceived value of the offering to the buyer is determined largely by the services provided to him than the products offered. This includes the business of all intangible services delivered to the customer. Some of the tangible services where both the goods and services are provided to the customer, like restaurants and supermarkets, also come under the purview of services marketing. According to Philip Kotler, a service is any activity or benefit that are being an offer to another that is essentially intangible and does not result in the ownership of anything. Characteristics of services: lack of ownership, intangibility, inseparability, variability, perishability, users' participation. A detailed insight of the distinctive characteristics of services is provided below. Intangibility, inseparability, variability, perishability, simultaneity, heterogeneity, lack of ownership. Characteristics 1. Intangibility. Services cannot generally be seen, tasted, felt, smelt, heard before being bought. The potential customers is unable to perceive the service before the service delivery. Service is totally intangible and cannot be seen what is done. Intangibility presents problems in the sense that the customer may experience difficulty in knowing and understanding what is on offer before and even after in receipt of the service. The challenge for a service provider is to make the service tangible, which implies resort to make some form of measurement and to provide tangible evidence. Example, computerized representation of hairstyle or a university prospectus. Characteristic 2. Inseparability. There is marked difference between physical goods and services in terms of the sequence of production and consumption. Sequence of production and consumption. Physical goods, services, production, sale, storage, produced and consumed at the same time, sale, consumption. Goods are first produced, stored, finally sold and consumed, whereas services are first sold, then produced and consumed simultaneously. For various services at production site, customers' presence is must. Counseling, rail travel, hotels, etc. Some services are produced and delivered in the absence of customers. Example, carpet cleaning, plumbing, etc. Whatever be the nature, and the extent of contact, the potential for inseparability of production and consumption remains. All services encounters have similarities. The service encounter, the provision and consumption of service, is central to service experience, and an understanding of service encounters involves an appreciation of a complex set of behaviors on the part of all involved in them. Waiting time. Time spent in queues or in process delays. Personal interaction between participants, service provider, customers, and other present. Expectations and perceptions of service adequacy and quality. Characteristic 3. Variability. An unavoidable consequence of simultaneous production and consumption is variability in performance of a service. The quality of a service may vary depending upon who provides it as well when and how it is provided. Example, an airline company provides on-time services to and fro, whereas some other airline provides through regular service but not on time. Within a service provider, one employee may be courteous and helpful, other might be inefficient as well as rude. Reducing variability involves determining the causes. It may be due to unsuitable personality traits in an employee, which is difficult to determine at the selection stage. There may be good sound reasons for the variations in performance. Example, it could be due to poor training and supervision, lack of communication and performance, and also lack of general support. Characteristic 4. Perishability. Services cannot be stored for later sale or use. Example, hotel rooms not occupied, airline seats not purchased, and colleges places not filled cannot be reclaimed since services or performances. They cannot be stored. If demand exceeds supply, it cannot be met as things cannot be taken out from warehouse. Even if capacity exceeds demands, the revenue value of the service is lost. Fluctuations of demand being one of the characteristics of service organization pose a great problem when these fluctuations are unpredictable. For an example, increase in the number of patients in any hospital due to sudden calamity, the hospital beds being the same. So, there should always be strategies to provide a match between demand and supply. Services, unlike goods, cannot be stored. A producer of cars which is unable to sell all its outputs in the current period can carry forward stocks to sell it in the subsequent years. Characteristic 5. Heterogeneity. To handle a service sector, even though standard sectors may be used, example, to book in the cab service, to quote for insurance in one's life, etc., each unit may differ from each another unit. Franchisee operations ensure to bring a standardization, but ultimately it is difficult to ensure the same level of output in terms of quality. From customers' viewpoint also it is difficult to judge quality without using it. Heterogeneity clear has wide-ranging implications for the operational side of service provision. Service personnel. Service delivery and customer satisfaction are highly dependent upon the activities and actions of those members of staff in the front line who actually perform and are seen to perform services. Service personnel must therefore be competent to perform services. They must be made aware of service standards and be able or enabled to achieve those standards. Service standards must be established and made clear to assist quality control and more effective management of service encounters, in particular, the evenness and equity of service delivery. Characteristic 6. Lack of ownership. Lack of ownership is the basic difference between a service industry and a product industry, as a customer gets an access for a service after paying for it but not owns it. Example, hotel rooms, hospital beds, etc. So service industry should put a stress on easier payment terms in order to facilitate better growth of service sector. Ownership relates to the notion that the consumer of services do not own them overall, but only have temporary access to them. Service importance of marketing of services. Key differentiator. Due to increasing homogeneity in product offering, the attendant services provided are emerging as a key differentiator in the mind of consumers. For an example, in case of two fast food chains serving a similar product, Pizza Hut and Domino's, more than the product, it is service quality that distinguishes the two brands from each other. Hence, marketers can leverage on the service offering to differentiate themselves from the competition and attract consumers. Importance of relationships. Relationships are a key factor when it comes to the marketing of services. Since the product is intangible, a large part of the customer's buying decision will depend on the degree to which he or she trusts the seller. Hence, the need to listen to the needs of the customer and fulfill them through the appropriate service offering and build a long lasting relationship which would lead to repeat sales and positive word of mouth. Customer retention. Given today's highly competitive scenario where multiple providers are vying for a limited pool of customers, retaining customers is more important than attracting new ones. Since services are usually generated and consumed at the same time, they actually involve the customer in service delivery process by taking into consideration his requirements and feedback. Thus, they offer great scope for customization according to customer requirements, thus offering increased satisfaction leading to high customer retention. Relationships are the key in service marketing because there is no tangible product. Relationships are the key. Service marketers must listen to and understand the needs of the customers and prospective customers to build loyalty and trust. Ultimately, effective relationships in service marketing will lead to repeat sales and positive word of mouth. Multiple touch points. Service marketing involves many touch points for the consumer. Interactions with the multiple people and experiences that are less tangible than when buying an actual product all impact the consumer's perspective of the purchase process. These touch points work together to establish a perception in the consumer's mind. Services proliferate. Consumers have many service options to choose from, and because the product is intangible, the challenge for the service marketer is to somehow make her services stand out from the crowd because service marketing is so prolific. Marketers must think of ways to communicate the benefits of the service they offer in language that reflects consumers' need and value. Feedback improves services. Unlike the marketing process for tangible product, service marketing actually involves the consumer in marketing process. He or she is engaged in the process and contributes to a positive outcome. For this reason, it is important to seek customer feedback and to use the feedback to improve service marketing effectiveness. Technology impacts. Technology is having a major impact on the service economy. You can use technology to streamline service activities and provide do it yourself options for the consumers. Internet based services, for instance, allow consumers to participate actively in the service marketing process, often never involving contact with another human being. Having a website is important because people like to get information about service providers before deciding which one to use. Classification of services. Classification based on the ultimate users of services. On the basis of ultimate users of services, services can be classified into two categories, and they are services to final consumers. Services to final consumers are services which are provided to ultimate consumers. Examples of such services are recreation and entertainment services, tourism, hairdressing and other personal care services, etc. Services to business firms. Services to business firms refers to services rendered by a service organization to business firms. Examples of these services are advertising, marketing research, maintenance and repairs, installations of plants and equipments, computer programming, consultancy, legal accountancy, etc. Classification based on the degree of intangibility of services. On the basis of the degree of intangibility, services can be classified into two broad categories. They are low intangibility content services or high tangibility services. Low intangibility content services are those services which have low intangibility content or which have high tangibility content. For example, of these services are fast food services, vending machines, etc. High intangibility content services or high intangibility services. High intangibility content services refers to the services which are highly intangible content or which are highly intangible. Examples of these services are consultancy services, legal services, babysitting, etc. Classification based on service options. On the basis of service options, services can be classified into two categories. They are primarily on the basis of service options, services can be classified into two categories. They are primarily people-based services. Primarily people-based services refer to those services. Primarily people-based services. Primarily people-based services refers to the services which are primarily people-based or labor-intensive. Examples of these services are restaurant, insurance, medical services, etc. Primarily equipment-based services. Now, these services are primarily equipment based on which involve low contact with people. Examples of these services are vending machines, automatic teller machines, services in banks, and cinema, etc. Classification based on specialization. On the basis of expertise, skills and specialization of the service providers, service can be classified into two categories. They are professional services. Professional services refers to services rendered by skilled specialized professionals to business firm and ultimate consumers. Legal services, medical services, consultancy services, accountancy and auditing services, etc. are examples of professional services. Non-professional services refers to services provided by non-professional persons. Babysitting, domestic help, etc. are the examples of non-professional services. Classification based on profit orientation. On the basis of profit orientation, profit motive services can be classified into two categories, and they are profit oriented services. Profit oriented services refers to services rendered primarily with profit motive. In other words, they are commercial services designed for profit. Examples of profit oriented services are banking services, insurance service, hotel, restaurant and catering service, tour operation, airline service, etc. Non-profit oriented services refers to a service rendered without any profit orientation or profit motive. Examples of such services are educational services by government, hospital services by government, services of cultural organizations, services of welfare organizations, services of religious institutions, services of research foundations. Classification on the basis of fact whether they are primarily directed at public at large or primarily directed at individuals. On the basis of the fact whether the services are primarily directed at public at large or primarily directed at individuals, services can be classified into two categories: public services, private services. Public services are directly provided to public at large. Examples of public services are public utility services, transport services, insurance services, municipal services. Private services which are directed at individuals. In other words, they are services designed for and used by consumers as individuals. Examples of private services are personal care services, medical advice. Classification on the basis of extent of contact between the service provider and the consumer. On the basis of extent of contact, the categories of services is being divided into two: high contact services, low contact services. High contact services refers to services in which the consumers or users have to spend more time with service providers to acquire or utilize the services. Example of high contact services are medical services, personal care services. Low contact services in which consumers or users have to spend less time with the service providers to acquire or use the services. For an example of low contact services are internet services, hospitality services, and theater performance. Classification on the basis of number of delivery outlets. On the basis of the number of delivery outlets, services can be classified into two categories: single or specific outlet services. Outlet services refers to services which are provided to customers through a single outlet. In this case, the convenience of receiving the service is less. Examples of these services are theater services, museum services. Multiple outlet services. Multiple outlet services refers to services which are provided to consumer through many outlets. In this case, the convenience of receiving services is more. Examples of these services are fast food service, bus service. Classification of services as external and internal. Services can be classified as external service refers to services provided by service organization to external or outside agencies. Example of these services are installation services, distribution services, etc. Internal services refers to service provided by the service provider within the organization. Examples of these services are internal transport, office cleaning. Classification on the basis of presence of customers and employees. On the basis of presence of customers and employees, services can be classified into three categories. They are self-services. Self-services refers to services in which there will be the presence of only the customers. Examples of self-services are self-service restaurants, ATM banking service, etc. Interpersonal services. Interpersonal services refers to services in which there will be the presence of both customers and employees. Examples of these services are education, hotel services, entertainment services, etc. Remote services. Remote services refers to services in which there will be the presence of only employees. Examples of such services are insurance services, etc. Services nature and role of service marketing. Now, it is dynamic process, it is customer oriented, it is creative, it is intangible. Transfer of ownership is not possible. It is heterogeneous, it has zero shelf life. Services or production is inseparable. It is perishable, it is social process, it is economic process, and it involves customer participation. The role of service marketing. Reduced operating expenses, competitive differentiation, enhanced quality, enhanced efficiency, enhanced responsiveness, enhanced market share, enhanced customer loyalty, enhanced competition, manufacturing support makes economic sense. Marketing mix, under which service marketing mix. Product price place promotion, people process physical evidence. First one, product. The product and service marketing mix is intangible in nature. Like physical products such as soap or a detergent, service products cannot be measured. Tourism industry or education industry can be an excellent example. At the same time, service products are heterogeneous, perishable, and cannot be owned. Place. In case of service is determined where is the service product going to be located. The best place to open up a petrol pump is on the highway or in the city. A place where there is a minimum traffic is a wrong location to start a petrol pump. Similarly, a software company will be better placed in a business hub with a lot of companies nearby rather than being placed in the town or rural area. Promotion. Promotions have become a critical factor in the service marketing mix. Services are easy to be duplicated, and hence it is generally the brand which sets a service apart from its counterpart. You will find a lot of banks and telecom companies promoting themselves rigorously. Pricing in case of services is rather more difficult than in the case of products. If you are a restaurant owner, you can price people only for food you are serving. But then, who will pay for the nice ambience you have built up for your customers? Who will pay for the brand you have put up in as a music? People is one of the element of service marketing mix. People define a service. If you have an IT company, your software engineers define you. If you have a restaurant, your chef and service staff defines you. If you are in banking, employees in your branch and their behavior towards customers defines you. Processes. Service processes is the way in which a service is delivered to the end customers. Let us take an example of two very good companies, McDonald's and FedEx. Both the companies thrive on their quick service, and the reason they can do that is their confidence on their process. Physical evidence. The last element in the service mix is a very important element. As said before, services are intangible in nature. However, to create a better customer experience, tangible elements are also delivered with the service. Take an example of a restaurant which has only chairs, tables, and good food, or a restaurant which has ambience, lighting, nice music along with good seating arrangements. And this also serves good food. Which one will you prefer? The one with the nice ambience? That's physical evidence. Difference between goods and services. Greater intangibility. True services have many tangible components like airplanes for air services, uniform dealers for people servicing in a hotel, and packaging for a fast food in a restaurant. There is an element of service which is intangible. So services are merely experiences which cannot be displayed like product on exhibition by sellers or marketers. Perishable nature. Services are essentially perishable, whereas goods are not so. Services cannot be carried over or packed or transferred like goods. If seats are vacant in a theater or a plane service or bus service, the revenue is lost forever. Variability. Services are variable, whereas products which are standardized are not so variable. Therefore, no two services rendered by some person but at different times are uniform. Even the service rendered by a single individual at different times cannot be same. Difficulty in quality control. Many services are offered only at the point of sale, and hence quality control or standardization of service is very difficult to achieve. But it is very easy to control the quality of the products, and the quality can be made uniform and standardized. Labor intensity is more in services, but it is not so in the case of goods. The labor intensive nature is more in the services of the individuals and also in the case of service organizations, and economies of scale cannot be enjoyed in the case of services. Legal and ethical barriers. There are some professional codes of ethics which prohibit professional practitioners from engaging in certain kinds of marketing and advertising activities. Peer pressure often limits the extent to which those professional service persons like doctor, dentist, attorney, etc. should develop their marketing programs. For example, doctors are not permitted to undertake any type of advertising or marketing their expertise. Unpredictability of demand. It is easy to predict the nature of demand for tangible goods, but it is very difficult to predict the nature of demand for services. Demand for some services can fluctuate strongly from time to time or from season to season. During the period of this epidemics, demand for certain kinds of services is most likely to rise. But the demand for certain products like flowers, coconuts, new clothing, etc., may be estimated easily during the period of festivals like Diwali, Dasra, etc. Difficulty for entering foreign markets. Demand for physical goods like automobiles, computers, etc., can be easily estimated in foreign markets through various media of advertising, but it is not possible to do so in the case of services because there are many barriers complicating the selling of services across the national boundaries. Limited application of portfolio theory. It is very difficult to apply portfolio theory to the management of services, whereas it is not so in the case of tangible goods. Without a portfolio of services, the life cycle concepts bears very little relevance for many services. Difficulties in establishing large market shares. There are usually very few barriers for service industry to make the entry into the most physical markets. Therefore, the competitors can quickly and easily enter the service markets, which they keep any one firm from establishing a dominant market share. Now, this is all about service gap. Under service gap, I'll be explaining each gap which is being seen. Under the gap 1, which is between service provider, what is being expected service from the consumer, and the service provider management perception of consumer expectation. Gap 2, translation of perception to service quality specification, and what is management perception of consumer expectation. Gap 3, service delivery, translation of perception into service quality specification. Gap 4, external communication to customers and service delivery. Gap 5, expected service and perceived service. Now these are the gaps which has to be discussed. And let's see further. The customer service gap model. The customer demands an increasing day by day. They not only want high quality products but also expect high quality customer service. During superior value to the customer is an ongoing concern of product manager. This not only includes the actual physical product but also service as well. SERQUAL, Service Quality Gap Model, is a gap method in service quality measurement, a tool that can be used by a product manager across all industries. The aim of this model is to identify the gaps between the customer expectations and the actual services provided at different stages of service delivery, close the gap and improve the customer service. The model was developed during 1985 where there was 5 different gaps. Customer gap. The gap between the customer expectation and the customer perception. The customer gap is difference between the customer expectation and the customer perception. Customer expectation is what the customer expects according to available resources and influenced by cultural background, family, lifestyle, personality, demographic, advertising experience with similar products and information available online. Customer perception is totally subjective and is based on the customer interactions with the product or service. Perception is derived from the customer satisfaction on the specific product or service and the quality of service delivery. The knowledge gap. The knowledge gap is the difference between the customer's expectations of service provided and the company's provision of the service. In this case, managers are not aware or have not correctly interpreted the customer's expectations in relation to the company's service or products. The policy gap. The gap between the management perception and the service quality specification. This gap reflects management's incorrect translation of the service policy into rules and guidelines for employees. Some companies experience difficulties translating customer expectations into specific service quality delivery. The delivery gap. The gap between the service quality specification and service delivery, and in which the delivery gap may specify the service required to support consumers but have subsequently failed to train their employees, put goods, processes, and guidelines in action. Some of the problems experienced in there is a delivery gap. Employees lack of product knowledge and have difficulty in managing customers' questions and issues. Organizations have poor human resource policies, lack of cohesive teams, and inability to deliver. The communication gap. The gap between the service delivery and external communications. In some cases, promises made by the companies through advertising, media, and communication raise customer expectations. When overpromising in advertising does not match with the actual service delivery, it creates a communication gap. For an example, Amazon.com provides books, movies, music, games, groceries, electronic toys, apparel, sports tools, general home and garden items, even booking airline tickets and movie tickets. Amazon is a good example of online business that tries to close the service gap in order to thoroughly meet the customer expectations. Understanding customer needs. From time to time, the consumer starts to shop in the Amazon online store. Amazon will attempt to understand their expectations. From where the customer first makes a product selection, Amazon creates a customer profile and attempts to offer alternative goods and services that might delight the consumer. Customer defined standards. When the consumer buys a product from Amazon, they select the mode of delivery and the company tells them the expected number of days it will take to receive their merchandise. For example, standard shipping is 3 to 5 days, but shipping in 1 or 2 days is also available. Service performance. Apart from defining the service delivery, Amazon goes one step further and delivers on its promises. Amazon performs. Orders often arrive ahead of the promised dates. Orders are accurate and are in excellent condition because of careful shipping practices. The pages describes how repack items and when refunds are given. The customer account page basically shows all previous purchases and exactly where every ordered item is in the shipping process. Service processes. Service process refers to how a service is provided or delivered to a customer. Delivery system is a creative process. Service process begins with a service concept and strategy to provide a service. Designing a service process involves issues such as location, facility, design, layout for effective design layout and workflow, procedure and job definitions for service quality, and equipment selection and adequate service capacity. According to Clovelock, there are some operational issues which have to be considered while designing the service process. In order to achieve economies of scale, process consistently, the operation people would prefer to cater to individuals so that the customer feels as being treated specially. Starting with designing service process, there are few following factors which has to be considered. The service itself. It's necessary to understand whether service itself is a process dependent. Most of the equipment based services like laundry, lawn care, as well as services with highly intangible attributes like insurance and banking are process dependent. Customer participation. In case of most services system, the customer is present when the service is being performed. The customer can be made a productive labor instead of being a passive bystander. Productivity can be increased by shifting some of the service activities onto the customer. Degree of customer contact. It refers to the physical presence of the customer in the system. The degree of customer contact can be measured by the amount of time customer is present in the system in relation to the total service time. Degree of divergence. A standardized service with a low divergence is designed for high volumes with a narrowly defined and focused service. Since the tasks are routine, it require a workforce with relatively low levels of technical skills. For customized services, more flexibility and judgment are being required to perform the service task. Location of service delivery. A service delivery process should be located either at the service provider's premises or carried out at the customer's place. In case of services like painting, carpet cleaning, etc., the services has to be delivered at home. Complexity of services. Complexity of services reflects the number of steps that are involved in delivering the services. By looking at the blueprint, it can easily determine whether the services are of high or low complexity. For example, internet banking offered by many banks like ICICI, HDFC, etc. have almost eliminated the need for personal interaction between the service provider and its customers. So technology-based services are efficient and convenient for the customer. Service providers lose an opportunity to enhance the quality of service through personal interaction. Service processes, and there are 7 steps. The first step is flow charting. Flow charting is a technique for displaying the nature and the sequence of different steps involved in delivering the service to customers. Offers an easy way to understand the totality of the customer service experience. Service blueprinting. It is important for an organization to gain a holistic view of how the elements of the service relate to each other. When the service production processes are complex and involve multiple service encounter, blueprint according to Shostak, it is graphical approach designed to overcome problems that occur where a new service is launched without adequate identification of a necessary support functions. There are 3 main elements of customer blueprint. All of the principal functions required to make and distribute a services are identified. Timing and sequencing relationships among the functions are depicted graphically. For each function, acceptable tolerance are identified in terms of variations from standard that can be tolerated without adversely affecting customers' perceptions of quality. Identify failure points. A good blueprint will bring out the key elements in service delivery, highlighting risks which can go wrong. The most serious fail points are those that will result in failure to access or enjoy the core product. They involve the reservations. Could that customer get through by phone? Was a table available at the desired time and date? Was the reservation recorded accurately? Seating. Was a table available when promised? There is also a possibility of delays between specific actions requiring the customers to wait since service delivery takes place over time. Failure proofing. Once the points that seem negative have been identified, then the careful analysis for the reasons for failure need to be evaluated in the service process. So, setting service standards. Service managers can learn the nature of customer expectation at each step in the process through both formal research and on-the-job experience. The expectations of the customers vary from desired level to the threshold level of merely adequate service. Service process redesign. The processes that have been outdated get a fresh lease of life, but this does not mean that in the first place of processes were poorly designed. Rather, changes in technology, customer needs, added services features, and new offering may have made existing processes crack and creak. These are the following types of service redesign. First, eliminating non-value adding steps with the goal of focusing on the benefit producing part of the service encounter. Some activities at the front desk and the back end process of services can be streamlined. Physical services. Physical redesign involves changing the customer's experience through the tangibles associated with the services or physical surroundings of a service. Pre-service. This type of redesign involves streamlining or improving the activation of service, focusing on the front-end process. For an example, express check-in at a hotel or car rental, pre-admission process to hospital and prepayment of tolls on highways. Direct services. Direct services means bringing services to the customer rather than asking the customer to come to the provider. Restaurant food, dry cleaning, delivery out to the office, pet grooming in the home, auto repair in one's driveway, and computer distance education and training services are the examples of the firms bringing service directly to the customers rather than customers traveling to the service provider. Self-service. Moving the customer into a production mode rather than a passive receiving mode is another approach to redesign. Redesigning the service process in this way increases benefits for the customers in terms of personal control, accessibility, and time. Bundled services. Grouping or bundling multiple services together is another way to redesign current offering. The benefit to customer is in receiving greater value combined with convenience than they might have received by hiring each service independently. Managing customers effectively. Managing customers effectively as partial employees is another way to enhance customer performance in service process and to reduce customer included induced service failures. Service blueprints and few elements to be added in the blueprint. The elements are service marketing. The complexity of service determines the type of symbols used and the number of lines in the blueprint. However, the rules in sketching the blueprint are not rigid. First element, customer role. This element involves all the steps a customer goes through in selecting a particular service, purchasing it, consuming that service, and finally rating it. On-stage and backstage employee actions. Now, on-stage employee's action may include the manner in which the waiter takes the order, the way he serves, which can be seen by the customer. On the other hand, backstage employee's action include other activities performed by service personnel which are necessary to support the on-stage personnel. Backstage employees are involved in preparing the food for the customers, arranging them, billing the service. Support services. The service blueprint maps all the support service activities process that help the service personnel in producing and delivering the services. For an example, a hotel may provide training for its service personnel both on stage and backstage. Technology. A service provider needs to look into different aspects of available technology and extent to which it needs to be upgraded for delivering the desired services at the expected quality. Conversion process. A service provider is required to choose a method of converting inputs into desired output from the pool of alternatives available. Equipment. A service provider should opt for equipment that is compatible with the other systems in the process. Flow of process. Flow of work one stage to another to produce the final output. It involves the logical arrangement of service personnel and the equipment to perform the operations according to the process. Service personnel. Service personnel play an important role in production and delivery of service. In fact, they provide a competitive advantage to the service provider. Service location. As services are intangible in nature, customers attach importance to the service location. They perceive it as an evidence of the quality of service offered. Growth of service sector in India. The service sector in India remains the engine for growth for India's economy and contributed 53% of India's gross value added at current prices in financial year 2022 until January 2022. India's service sector increased CAGR of 11.43% to 101.47 trillion in financial year 2020 from 68.81 trillion in financial year 2016. Now, India's IT and business services market is projected to reach 19.93 US billion dollar by 2025. And few key points. Some of the developments in the service sector in the recent past are follows. In October 2021, India's service exports increased by 23.52% to reach US dollar 20.86 billion. In June 2021, India's export increased by 48.34%, that is 32.5 billion US dollar, marking the seventh consecutive month of the growth. Telecommunications sector, education sector, which can be easily seen. By October 2021, the Health Ministry e-Sanjeevani telemedicine service crossed 14 million 1.4 crore teleconsultations since its launch, enabling patient-to-doctor consultation from the confines of their home and doctor-to-doctor consultation. Now, these are the few points about the service sector, which includes various forms of programs, various forms of technology being involved. Thank you so much for patiently listening to me. Please watch, like, share, and subscribe.